There's an emergency board meeting in Seoul. We were sent to find you. Kate didn't understand the words, but she didn't have to. The shift in Kang Min's expression told her everything. The quiet traveler she'd known suddenly looked like someone else. A man carrying the weight of something larger than himself. He answered the men calmly, voice low, then turned back to her. His face had softened again, but there was tension around his eyes. Is everything okay? She asked. Yes, he said gently. Just work. Work? She repeated, half smiling. You really can't escape it, can you? He hesitated. No, not always. The men waited near the door. He looked at them, then at her. For a moment the choice hung there, a silent struggle between duty and something far more personal. Finally he sighed. I'll drive you back to the guest house first. Then I have to go to Seoul for 1 day. 1 day? She asked softly. Maybe 2, he admitted. But I'll come back. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight that made her chest tighten. The drive back was quiet. The road wound through glistening fields, sunlight breaking through patches of cloud. Kate watched the scenery blur past, trying to understand the knot of emotions. Inside her, he wasn't just some kind stranger. He wasn't just a tourist. Whoever he was, those men had treated him like someone powerful, someone important. Enough to send a search party for. Kang Min, she said finally. Can I ask you something? He glanced over. Of course. You don't have to tell me everything, but should I worry? About who you really are? He smiled a little, eyes soft. No, you should never worry. I just have things I can't explain yet. She held his gaze. Then I'll wait until you can. The corner of his mouth curved upward. You make that sound easy. It's not, she said quietly. But something tells me you're worth the wait. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of the tires on wet asphalt was the only thing between them. When they reached the guest house, the sun was already high, drying the last drops of rain from the eaves. The air smelled of citrus and seaweed. Kang Min carried her small bag to the steps. If you need anything while I'm gone, the owner here can help. She knows my friend. Kate nodded. And when you get back? He smiled. Then we'll see another secret place. She laughed softly. You're making that sound like a promise. It is. He reached into his jacket pocket and handed her a folded business card. The logo on it was elegant and unfamiliar, the Kang Group, embossed in silver. Something clicked in her mind. The cafe owner's reaction. The suits. The way people had spoken to him. Her voice dropped. Kang Group? As in that Kang Group? The one everyone was talking about in the news last month. He didn't answer right away. His eyes searched hers, uncertain. Then he said quietly, yes. She stared at the card, then at him. You're one of them? He nodded slowly. The eldest son. 1,000 thoughts tangled in her head, the private jets, the scandals, the glossy magazine covers she'd glimpsed at airports. She remembered his old sweatshirt, his borrowed car, the way he'd laughed in the storm. None of it matched. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, voice barely a whisper. Because I didn't want you to see that first, he said simply. I wanted you to see me. She swallowed hard, unsure what to say. He reached out, fingers brushing her hand, gentle, tentative. I'll come back soon. I promise. For a heartbeat, she wanted to believe it completely. Go, she said finally, forcing a small smile. Your kingdom needs you. That made him laugh, the tension breaking for a moment. Only if you promise to still be here. When I return. I will. He hesitated, then leaned forward and pressed his forehead lightly against hers. A gesture so tender it stole the air from her lungs. I'll be back, he whispered again, then stepped away. She stood on the steps as he climbed into the SUV. The engine started, the car pulled down the hill, and soon the sound of it faded into the rhythm of the waves. Kate stayed there a long while, the morning sun warming her skin, his business card still clutched in her hand. The island was bright again, clean and calm, but somewhere beneath its beauty she could feel the faint tremor of change, the sense that the simple, secret world they'd built over the past 2 days was about to collide with the one he'd tried so hard to escape. The city swallowed him whole the moment his plane touched down. Seoul gleamed beneath the morning haze, towers of glass and light, traffic crawling like veins through the heart of power. As Kang Min's car left the airport, the lines on his face hardened, piece by piece, until the man from Jeju, the one who laughed under candlelight with a stranded tourist, had vanished behind the practiced calm of a Kang heir. By the time the elevator doors opened onto the boardroom of Kang Group headquarters, he was every inch the man his father expected. Precise suit, clean voice, no trace of the wind or the rain that still clung to his memory. Min-ah, his father said from the head of the table, tone clipped but relieved. Finally, you disappear for a week without warning, and the board assumes you've eloped. A ripple of polite laughter moved through the directors. Kang Min only bowed. Apologies, father. I needed time to clear my head. Clear your head before the quarterly reports? The older man's eyes narrowed. You were born with responsibilities. They don't vanish just because you fly off to Jeju. Yes, father. The meeting resumed, slides flickering across the screen, profit margins, hotel acquisitions, an upcoming fashion collaboration in Paris. Kang Min answered questions automatically, his voice steady, his mind elsewhere. In the pauses between numbers and strategy, he saw her, Kate, standing on the guesthouse steps, hair catching sunlight, eyes uncertain but trusting. The image returned with such clarity it almost hurt. When the meeting ended, the directors filed out with shallow bows and muted chatter. Only his younger sister, Kang Soo-jin, lingered by the window. You look different, she said, arms crossed. Jeju changed you? He managed a small smile. Maybe I just slept for once. She tilted her head, studying him. Or maybe you met someone. Kang Min froze, just for a heartbeat. Why would you think that? Because you're smiling without realizing it, she said softly. And because father's assistant saw you at the airport with sand on your shoes. You don't go to beaches alone. He laughed, deflecting. You always notice too much. I notice when my brother finally looks alive again. She stepped closer. Whoever she is, be careful. Father's already talking about merging the hotel branch with Han Group. That would mean a marriage arrangement. His tone flattened. I know. Soo-jin sighed. Then you know how dangerous your timing is. He looked out at the skyline, the glittering, airless world his family ruled. Everything here feels dangerous, Soo-jin. Maybe that's the problem. That evening, the Kang residence hosted another of its endless dinner gatherings. Crystal chandeliers, journalists at the gates, the scent of imported lilies everywhere. Kang Min sat beside his father, answering polite questions from investors' wives while ignoring the woman seated across from him, Han Ji-eun, daughter of Han Group's chairman. Elegant, poised. The press already whispered her name next to his. You've been away, Kang Min SSI, Ji-eun said, smiling sweetly. Jeju, I heard? He nodded once. Just for a few days. I adore Jeju, she continued, voice dripping with practiced charm. It's romantic, though. Perhaps lonely, unless one has company. He looked up, meeting her gaze evenly. Sometimes loneliness is the point. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she recovered, turning to speak to someone else. Across the table, his father's sharp eyes missed nothing. Later that night, Kang Min stood on the balcony, city lights stretching like a galaxy below. He loosened his tie, inhaling air that felt too thick, too polished. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to the last photo he'd taken, a blurry shot of Kate, laughing beneath the storm shelter's flickering light. The sound of her voice seemed to echo in the night air. For the first time in years, he felt something stir that had nothing to do with duty or legacy. He wanted to be back there, back on that island, back where her laughter drowned out everything else. But the distance between them now felt wider than the sea. Jeju moved at its own rhythm again. The waves came and went. The air smelled of tangerine peel and salt. Tourists filled the morning markets, bargaining for souvenirs and roasted chestnuts. And somewhere among them, Kate tried to look like one of the crowd. But she didn't feel like one of them anymore. Kang Min had been gone only 2 days, yet the island already felt different, emptier in places. She hadn't realized he had filled. She found herself taking the same paths they'd walked, pausing at the cliffs where the wind tangled her hair, watching the sea and hearing his voice, teasing her about gulls stealing sandwiches. She told herself it was silly. He was just a kind stranger who'd helped her. Nothing more. And yet she caught herself replaying small moments. The brush of his fingers when he handed her tea, the way his laughter had softened the rain, the look in his eyes when he'd promised, "I'll come back." Her heart gave a small, inconvenient ache every time she thought of it. At the guesthouse cafe, Mrs. Nam, the owner, poured her coffee with the affectionate fuss of a mother. "So, are Kang Min SSI left for Seoul?" the woman asked in careful English. Kate nodded. Work called him back. Mrs. Nam sighed knowingly. "Ah, work. Always chasing that boy. He is important man, you know?" Kate smiled. "Yes, I'm starting to figure that out." The woman gave her a searching look. "You didn't know who he was?" "Should I have?" Mrs. Nam chuckled. "He stays here sometimes to rest, but on TV he looks very serious. Kang. Group young master. Newspapers talk about him often." Kate nearly choked on her coffee. "TV. Mrs. Nam said, wiping her hands. "Business family. His father builds hotels, owns half of Seoul. I think you met very big man." Kate stared at her cup, the surface trembling slightly in her hands. She'd suspected, of course, the suits, the way people bowed to him, but hearing it spoken aloud made the ground shift. The simple, gentle man who had sat in a storm with her was part of that glittering world she'd only ever glimpsed on magazine covers. And she was just a girl who'd lost her luggage. "Are you all right, dear?" Mrs. Nam asked. "Yeah," Kate said softly. "Just surprised." That afternoon, she wandered down to the beach near the lighthouse, the wind tugging at her hair. The tide was low, leaving the rocks glistening like polished glass. She took off her sandals and walked until the cold water lapped at her toes. In her hand, she held his business card. The silver letters caught the sunlight, the Kang Group, and for the 100th time she wondered what kind of life lay behind that elegant font. She tried to imagine him there, in a suit, sitting at long tables under chandeliers, speaking words that moved millions of dollars. The image felt wrong. The Kang Min she knew was the one who'd given her his jacket, who'd laughed when thunder made her jump. Maybe both versions were true. She crouched and traced a heart in the sand, half laughing at herself, half embarrassed. Wave rolled in and erased it instantly. She took that as a sign and muttered, "Yeah, that's about right." The next morning she joined a small island tour, just a handful of visitors and a friendly guide. They stopped at Hallison's base, then at an art village where local painters displayed works, bright with color. One painting caught her eye. A couple walking beneath shared umbrellas, faces hidden, the storm around them swirling in blues and silvers. Kate stood staring at it until the guide asked if she wanted to buy it. She almost did. Instead, she said, "Not today," and smiled to herself. It's enough just to remember. That evening, back at the guest house, she scrolled idly through her phone. The Wi-Fi was slow, but one headline managed to load. Kang Group heir spotted at Han family dinner. Merger or marriage? The photo below showed Kang Min in a dark suit beside a glamorous woman. The caption called her Han Jiun, daughter of Han Group chairman. For a long moment, Kate just stared. The rational part of her brain said it was business, high society alliances, public appearances. But something unreasonably sharp twisted in her chest anyway. She set the phone down, pressing her palms against her eyes. You barely know him, she whispered to herself. You can't feel this. But her body betrayed her. She could still feel the warmth of his hand, hear the way he'd said, "You shouldn't worry." And she did worry because she'd started to care. Outside, Jeju's night wind carried the distant murmur of waves. She stepped onto the small balcony, hugging her arms around herself. The moon hung low over the water, the same moon. That must be shining over Seoul. Maybe he was looking at it too. The thought made her smile through the ache. She whispered to the wind, "Come back soon, Kang Min." The wind, mischievous and tender, seemed to carry the words away toward the mainland. Night in Seoul never truly slept. Kang Min sat in his office long after the city lights had blurred into constellations of neon below. The board's reports lay forgotten on his desk, their figures dissolving into static. All he could see was Jeju, the gray sweep of the sea, the line of Kate's smile. He'd promised to come back. Yet here he was, pinned inside glass walls and expectation. A soft knock broke the silence. Soo-jin slipped in with 2 mugs of coffee. "You're still here." "Couldn't sleep," he said. She studied him a moment, then set the coffee down. Father's pushing the Han merger again. The tabloids already printed dinner photos. "You should know before you open your phone." "I've seen them," he murmured. "Then maybe do something about them," she said gently. "If you care about her." Her words hit like a pulse of lightning. "If you care about her." He exhaled slowly. "What would you have me do, Soo-jin?" "Walk away from all of this. Maybe just walk toward what makes you human," she said, and left him alone with the echo. Far south, Jeju's dawn was a watercolor wash of pink and gold. Kate sat on a rock above the beach, camera in hand, snapping the horizon more for the distraction than the view. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number, Seoul area code. "Kate," his voice faint through static. She nearly dropped the phone. "Kang Min? Where? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," he said, though he sounded tired. "I saw the articles. Don't believe them. It's business. Nothing more." She swallowed. "You don't owe me an explanation." "Maybe not. But I wanted to give you one anyway." A pause stretched between them, filled with the sound of waves and distant traffic. "I don't know how long I can stay away," he said quietly. "Everything here feels wrong without you in it." Her heart twisted. "Then come back." He laughed under his breath, the sound warm and pained all at once. "You make it sound simple." "Maybe it is," she said. "Maybe you're the one making it complicated." For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said, almost a promise, "Give me a few days." The line clicked off. That night, Kang Min stood on the rooftop helipad of the Kang Group Tower, the wind flattening, his hair against his forehead. Below, Seoul shimmered like a circuit board of obligations. Above, the same stars hung that had watched them on Jeju. He took out his phone again, scrolling to her last message. One line, sent hours ago. "The storm's over here. The sky's clear again." He smiled, something unshakable settling behind his ribs. He didn't know yet how he would untangle himself from the family web or what price Defiance would carry, but he knew where he needed to be when the next storm came. He turned toward the elevator, already dialing his pilot. Down on Jeju, the sea breathed in and out, steady as a heartbeat. Kate looked up from her balcony at the distant glitter of a plane crossing the night sky and whispered, half laughing, "Don't make me wait too long, Kang Min." The stars didn't answer, but somewhere between the island and the city, distance began to shrink. The helicopter banked low over the coastline, and Jeju unfolded below him like a memory he'd been replaying too long. The sea glimmered cobalt. Tangerine groves flashed orange in the morning light. Kang Min pressed a hand to the window, feeling a tremor in his chest that had nothing to do with altitude. It had taken 3 sleepless nights, 2 defiant phone calls, and 1 quiet resignation letter that he hadn't yet sent to his father's desk. But he was here, finally, as the rotor slowed and the skids touched down near the private landing pad outside. Siagupo, his driver, opened the door. Sir, should I alert the local staff? No, Kang Min said. No entourage, no press. Not this time. He wanted to arrive as himself. Not the heir, not the figure in headlines. Just the man who'd once shared candlelight with a girl stranded in a storm. He traded the company car for a rental sedan, the kind that smelled faintly of salt and sun, bleached seats. The road wound through stone fences and green hills until he reached the guest house. The same weathered sign creaked in the breeze. The same sea shimmered beyond. For a moment he sat behind the wheel, palms damp, heartbeat absurdly loud. What if she didn't want to see him? What if the newspapers had already told her everything and turned his truth into scandal? He stepped out anyway. Inside, Mrs. Nam looked up from her counter, eyes widening. Kang Min SSI, you came back. He bowed lightly. Is she still here? Mrs. Nam's smile warmed. She is by the cliffs this morning. Always walking, that one. Thank you, he said, and hurried out before his courage had time to second-guess itself. The path down to the cliffs was damp with dew. Seabirds wheeled overhead. And there she was, Kate, standing at the edge, camera strap looped around her wrist, hair lifting in the wind. He stopped a few paces behind her, unsure whether to call her name or let the wind do it for him. She turned first, sensing him the way you sense someone you've been thinking of too long. Her breath caught. You actually came back. I told you I would. He looked different. A little tired, maybe thinner, but lighter too, as if the city's armor had been stripped away. She walked toward him, eyes searching. You left without saying much, she said softly. Then I see your face in the news beside some heiress, and I'm supposed to believe that it was a lie, he finished quietly. And you're right to wonder. I should have told you from the beginning. They stood facing each other, the sea roaring below, words fighting their way through the space. Between them, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the folded resignation letter, creased, from his hand. This, he said, holding it out, is what I'm giving up. Kate blinked. What is it? My place at Kong Group, my inheritance. All of it, if I have to. Why? She asked, bewildered. That's your life. He shook his head. That's my cage. She looked at the paper, then at him. I didn't ask you to do that. I know, he said, but meeting you showed me what honesty feels like. For once, I want to be seen without a company attached to my name. The wind tugged at the letter until he tightened his grip. Kate stepped closer, her voice low. You don't have to throw away everything. I just needed the truth. He exhaled, almost laughing at himself. The truth is simple, Kate. I'm a man who got lost and found someone who made the world make sense again. For a long beat, neither moved. Then she reached out and closed his hand around the letter. Then keep it, she whispered. Decide later. Right now, just be here. They began to walk along the cliff path, neither saying much. The silence between them felt full, not fragile, like the space after a storm when everything waits to bloom again. When they reached the bench overlooking the sea, he finally spoke. There's something else I need to tell you, he said. She turned, eyebrows raised. I didn't come back only to explain, he said. I came back because I don't want that to be the end of our story. Her eyes softened. And what happens next? He smiled, the kind that reached his eyes this time. Whatever we make of it. The waves crashed below, throwing spray into sunlight. They spent the rest of the morning walking without a plan. The cliffs curved into a hidden path that led down toward a quiet cove, a place neither of them had visited before. The storm had scattered shells across the sand, pale and shining like small moons. Kate slipped off her shoes first, laughing as the cool water nipped her ankles. You sure the tide isn't going to trap us again? Kang Min smiled. If it does, I'll take it as a sign we're meant to stay. She splashed a little water his way, and he pretended to be scandalized, holding his hands up in surrender. The laughter that followed came easily, carried away on the wind. It felt almost ordinary, but for both of them it was anything but. They found a small cafe by the harbor for lunch, a bright place strung with paper lanterns and smelling of roasted fish and lemon. The owner recognized Kang Min from some past visit and served them privately on the deck. Kate watched him as he thanked the man in fluent Jeju dialect, his voice softer than she. Remembered from Seoul's headlines. "You fit here more than you think," she said. He glanced up. "Do I?" She nodded. "You're not trying so hard here. It's like the island lets you breathe." He took a moment before answering. "Maybe that's what you do too." Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "What I do? You let people breathe," he said. "I didn't realize how much air I was missing until I met you." The words were quiet, almost shy. Kate felt the heat rise in her cheeks and looked down at her plate, smiling despite herself. In the afternoon, they rented bicycles and followed the coastal trail. The road wound between tangerine orchards, the sweet smell hanging heavy in the warm air. Children waved from a gate. Kang Min waved back with that unguarded grin she had almost forgotten. Halfway along the path, a sudden breeze swept through, scattering petals from the cherry trees. Kate stopped pedaling and tilted her face toward the sky. "You know," she said, "if I'd written down a list of everything that could go wrong on my first trip to Korea, getting stranded in a storm would have been at the top. And yet, he asked, "I think it's the best thing that's happened to me." He slowed beside her, letting the bikes roll to a stop. The silence that followed was tender, the kind that held its own language. He reached out, brushing a stray petal from her hair. Then maybe it was meant to be. By sunset, they'd climbed back to the cliffs. The sea glowed copper beneath them, gulls dipping in the wind. Neither spoke for a long while. Kang Min finally said, "Tomorrow I'll go back to Seoul to settle things properly. I want to make space to choose my own life." Kate's chest tightened. "And if your family doesn't let you?" He turned toward her. "Then I'll build something new. Maybe here. Maybe somewhere you'd like to see." She tried to laugh. "That's a big promise." "I'm used to big promises," he said softly. "I just want one that's mine this time." The light faded until only the sound of the waves filled the pause between them. Then he took her hand, fingers warm and certain. "For now," he said, "let's promise this much, that no matter what noise comes from Seoul, we'll remember the island the way it is right now." Kate looked at their joined hands, at the sky melting into twilight. "Deal," she whispered. They sat until the stars appeared, their shoulders touching, not needing more words. The island wind moved around them like an old song, and for the first time neither of them felt like a guest in the other's world. Somewhere in the dark, the tide began to rise again, steady and sure. The limousine door opened onto the marble steps of Kang Group Tower, and the flash of cameras burst like lightning. Kang Min didn't flinch this time. He had walked through storms with real thunder. This was only noise. He moved past the reporters without a word, bodyguards forming a shield around him. Questions ricocheted. "Is it true you resigned? Are you breaking off the Han engagement? Who's the woman on Jeju Island?" He kept his gaze ahead. Kate's face, not theirs. Upstairs, the air smelled of old money and control. His father, Chairman Kang, sat behind a desk the size of a small yacht. His mother stood by the window, arms folded. The room was all glass and shadows. "You disappear for a week," his father said evenly, "and the markets panic. Do you understand what your absence cost us?" Kang Min bowed slightly. "I do. I also understand what staying silent was costing me." His father's eyes narrowed. "Meaning?" "I'm not a product, father. I'm your son." The chairman's jaw flexed. "You are my successor. Do not confuse the two." His mother tried to soften the air. "Minna, we only want stability. The Han alliance is a transaction," he finished. "One that doesn't include my consent." Silence. The kind that filled the whole room. His father leaned forward. "You think you can walk away? From us? From everything built in your name?" Kang Min placed the folded letter, the same one he'd shown Kate, on the desk. "I'm not walking away from my name," I'm choosing what it means. The chairman's voice dropped, cold. And what of the woman? The foreigner everyone is whispering about. He hesitated only a breath. She's someone I met before I remembered who I was supposed to be. Someone who sees me without this. He gestured at the tower around them. His mother's eyes glistened, half fear, half love. You think love will protect you from this world? No, he said softly. But it might remind me I'm human. The meeting ended with nothing signed, nothing forgiven. By evening he was alone in his apartment overlooking the Han River, city lights reflecting like broken glass. He poured a glass of water, not wine. He wanted clarity, not escape. He scrolled through his phone until he found her name. He didn't call. Not yet. He needed to fight his own battles first. Outside, thunder rolled over Seoul. He looked out at the skyline and whispered, "Just hold on a little longer, Kate. I'll come back clean." Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating his reflection in the window. Tired, defiant, alive. The rain had come back to Jeju. It wasn't the fierce, blinding storm that had once trapped them together. Just a soft, persistent drizzle that blurred the horizon and soaked the earth in memory. Kate watched it from the veranda of the guest house, a mug of green tea cooling between her palms. The world felt hushed, like the island itself was holding its breath. Kang Min hadn't called in 3 days. She told herself he was busy, that Seoul was louder and heavier than anyone could imagine. But each hour of silence chipped at the edge of her calm. She'd seen enough dramas to know how distance could swallow words before they reached the heart. Mrs. Nam appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on an apron. "Still no message?" she asked kindly. Kate smiled faintly. "No, but I'm pretending he's just writing a long one." The older woman nodded. Men from the city, they think too long before they speak. Let him chase the noise out of his head first. When the rain paused that afternoon, Kate walked down to the harbor. Fishermen were mending their nets, the smell of salt and diesel thick in the air. She sat on a crate and watched the tide creep in, thinking about the way he'd looked on the cliffs, barefoot in the wind, more alive than any headline could make him. Her phone buzzed once. Her heart leapt. It was only an airline promotion. She laughed under her breath, part heartbreak, part absurdity. "You're really losing it, Kate." A small girl nearby offered her a tangerine, bright and sweet. Kate thanked her and peeled it slowly, the citrus scent lifting her mood. Maybe that was all love was. Tiny kindnesses in the waiting. That evening, she opened her journal and began to write, unsure whether it was a letter to him or to herself. "If you're fighting for something real, then keep fighting. I'll be here, learning what it means to stay without answers." Her handwriting wavered when thunder rumbled far out at sea. She closed the book and drew her knees up, watching lightning blink beyond the window. The island had its own pulse. It beat in sync with her nerves. Each flash felt like a signal from the mainland. Somewhere in that storm, he was still there. Meanwhile, miles away in Seoul, Kang Min faced the board again. Flashes of cameras, the metallic ring of voices debating succession. He answered every question clearly, every threat with calm precision. But the thought of her waiting under rain kept cutting through the noise. When the meeting finally adjourned, he sent a single message before anyone could stop him. "Still fighting. Don't give up on me." Back on Jeju, Kate's phone vibrated against the table. She blinked at the screen, relief flooding through her so fast it made her dizzy. She pressed the phone to her chest and whispered, "I won't." The rain had stopped. Outside, the sky was breaking open again, a thin band of sunlight glinting on the waves, weak but certain. She stepped out onto the veranda barefoot, letting the last raindrops cool her skin. Somewhere far away, the city roared around him, but here the only sound was the sea returning to itself. Morning broke over Seoul like a bruise, gray and restless. The city's noise had already risen. Horns, headlines, the hum of ambition. Kang Min stood at the tall windows of his office, watching the Han River slide through the fog. In the reflection he saw not the heir everyone expected, but the man Jeju had begun to carve out of him. Thank you for watching. Episode 2 ends here. Find out more about the story in episode 3 coming up soon. If you enjoyed the story, leave us a comment. Also like, share and subscribe to our channel, and click on the notification bell to get notified whenever a new story is made.